Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Black Agenda Podcast live. And this is our weekly roundup. This is weekly roundup number 18. And for those who may be new to watching us, every single Saturday at 7:30 p.m., we bring everybody the news from the past week. So we'll have a bunch of things to cover. We'll start with the Supreme Court and their decision on the Trump election case. We'll go, of course, dig into the coronavirus numbers from this past week. A bunch of new records have been set as far as cases, deaths, and hospitalizations. And of course, we'll also get into some just kind of general news, whether that's coming out of Mississippi with some school funding lawsuits maybe going forward. And then we'll also cover some fun news at the end of the show with our quick hits, including 2020's most mispronounced words. And so that'll be some stuff to look forward to later in the show. And of course, my name is Devin Dito. My co-host here is Adrian Devin, and we've started the Black Agenda Podcast back in June, and we are going strong here. Our second to last live episode for 2020. And so Adrian is going to kick us off and get us into the news and get us going.
Yeah, Devin, it's awesome. I'm glad that we decided to start doing this because it's one of those things where I feel like news can get biased, and we need people who are trying to bring in a more educational approach. And viewers, though we got so much going on in 2020, and though all of this is going on, where we've got thousands of people who have died, and thousands dying per day. We've got, several millions going hungry, several millions who are sick with the virus, a lot of millions who are without jobs. Yet we have Congress who decides to stage a coup to try to undo democracy. We have a party who's decided to champion the voice of one person and marry themselves with Donald Trump rather than champion the voice of the American people. Devin, rather than work to pass a stimulus check to get us through a dark winter, they try to talk about secession. Where are we in America, viewers, where in 2020 we have people talking about secession? But here we are, Devin. Yesterday, the Supreme Court of the United States dealt a good blow to Donald Trump and his sycophants when they tried to overturn the election for 2020. In a 7-2 ruling, the court rejected a lawsuit brought by the state of Texas against 4 states that really aimed to, nullify their votes, which, the court pretty much said, no state has a right to challenge the way another state does their elections. I mean, that's basically in the Constitution where we talk about states' rights, where we know historically Texas has always championed states' rights. So I don't know why they would try to do a court case, Devin, to go against that. So yeah, Devin, it's insane, that we had to take it to the Supreme Court. But I will say, Devin, to say the least about it, I'm happy that Trump appointees on the Supreme Court, they actually upholded the rule of law. None of them, voted, in favor. They weren't a part of this too. So I was really thrilled to kind of see even people that he appointed actually, have a backbone against him.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we haven't seen really up until this point. At least on a broad stage. We've seen some Republicans come out and say Joe Biden should be getting briefings and we should move on and with the transition and everything. But yeah, I mean, this was Donald Trump's, firewall, to him at least. This was his last gasp. This is why they rushed through, putting Amy Coney Barrett on the bench. This is why they did all of that, was so that he could come back and say, listen, I need the Supreme Court to rule in my favor on an election case to try to get mail-in ballots tossed out. I mean, Trump told us the plan. That's what's funny about all of this. Donald Trump told us in September and October and early November, and even before that, he's told us the game plan, which was to cry, fraud, say it was rigged. And then he said at the press conference, the court is going to throw out these ballots. He tried it. It didn't work, but he told us exactly what he was going to do. But, the good thing is the country has systems. We have laws and procedures that guide us in how we do things. And Trump thought he was above all that. And they withstood that test. Trump has really tested every single system of government that we've had. And so far, it looks like most of them have withstood the pressure that he's tried to apply to them. I mean, he tweeted, he was disappointed that they didn't, take the case, and it was a 7-2 ruling, so it was pretty. It wasn't even close. I think the only two who dissented was Justice, I think, Alito and Thomas, which
That's
is
correct.
not surprising, considering how those two vote. But yeah, I mean, this is something he was trying. They were trying to invalidate the votes of 4 states: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia, trying to say that there was fraud in all of those states and that the court should throw out those votes and award Donald Trump, the presidency. And they refused to take the case. So I don't know what else we need to do at this point, to understand that, but Joe Biden is going to be the next president. He's gone his legal challenges. He's used everything within his power to try to do it. And he just has been unsuccessful. And just to give you an idea of this last attempt, now this case was brought by Texas, as you said it. Here in Texas, we're a little different. I don't know if it's the water, the air, the oil. I don't know, but things just seem to be a little different here. And the Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton, is the one who filed this case with the Supreme Court, which was rejected. And so just to give you an idea who Ken Paxton is. One, he's a supporter of the president, but Ken Paxton has also been under, he was indicted for securities fraud like 5 years ago and has yet to see a day in court for it. But he's also now being investigated by the FBI for an abuse of power and corruption in his dealings with an Austin, Texas investor. And like 7 aides in his office reported him to the FBI for corruption and abuse of power when it came to this investor in Austin. So these are the kind of people that have been around Donald Trump during this time when he's trying to overturn the election results. And he also, Adrian, unfortunately, this lawsuit had the support of 126, Republican members of the House and 17 other states who all supported this. So you're talking about a large portion of our government, or at least our, House of Representatives, and also a lot of people around the country who supported this lawsuit, thinking that there was some kind of massive, voter fraud out there that stole the election from Donald Trump, even though, we've seen lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit get rejected, thrown out, dismissed. And yet people still somehow believe that this thing was stolen from Donald Trump. I don't know what else they need to see.
I think Ken Paxton probably saw all those pardons being thrown out, and he was, he was probably
like,
just wondering. Yeah, he's like, hey, what I got to do to get a pardon? And Trump, he probably just, whatever it was, he's going to try to do. So that's where we are, Devin, where, you got a president who dangles pardons, and you've got people who are willing to, go beyond the truth to get that pardon, because that's what they're really doing. Viewers are really trying to go beyond what's actually true. And to say anything to those 126 House representatives who signed off on that, that's why the whole insurrection clause has kind of been invoked. By the representative from New Jersey, Bill Pascrell. I don't think that's going to go anywhere or Nancy, Speaker Pelosi is not going to seat those 126 members. I mean, that would be something to, I guess, stage that, but it's probably not going to go anywhere. But Devin, what it really feeds into is what you were saying. Is like, how much are we going to go through with this? I mean, you've got one state, Republican Party that's retweeting people asking them to die. I mean, you got, Arizona, retweeted the Stop the Steal advocate who said, I'm willing to die or give my life for this fight. And their retweet read, he is or you. And, where are we where a state, political party is trying to tell people to go out and die for this fight? You've got people like Representative Cynthia Johnson of Michigan, who's getting voicemails and threatening letters and calls, day in, day out, talking about she should be hung from a noose. It's scary, Devin, that people who are just doing their jobs, who are just trying to show the American people that they can trust their democracy, just trying to show the American people that whenever you go to the polls, whatever you cast your ballot, we're going to honor that. We're going to uphold that. That's all these people are trying to do, Devin. But there's been so much rhetoric, there's been so much conspiracy theories thrown around that people are starting to really buy into it, and they're starting to act on it. That's why you see, in Pennsylvania, they're suing their electors. You see in other states where their electors are having to have armed detail just to protect them because they're getting so many threats, Devin. I don't know where we are in America and how we get out of this because it's so controversial. I'm glad that, the Electoral College is going to be certifying the vote on Monday, but that's not going to stop Donald Trump. I think if his Supreme Court that he's appointed, more justices, I think, than anybody, if they're not enough to stop him, he's going to keep going right through the Electoral College and keep trying to do this up until January 20th.
Exactly. And it's going to be him backed by millions of other people who voted for him. It's and that's the reason why we keep talking about this is like at what point do we, understand that Trump lost, Joe Biden won, we have to move on at some point. You were talking about, the electors, and they're suing their electors in Pennsylvania. We're not supposed to know who these electors are in the first place. Like, we were talking about this before the show. You are not supposed to know who the Georgia voting implementation manager is. Like, you're not supposed to know who he is on a national level. I mean, that's just how crazy and how far this has really gone, where you're attacking completely innocent people who are local officials, voting workers, poll workers who got up and did their job and are just being attacked with awful things. And this doesn't stop, after Joe Biden is elected. He's going to have to deal with a country that is very divided, a country that believes in conspiracy theories like QAnon, and so and just to point out too, the electors do meet on Monday to certify the election. And then after that, Congress will vote on January 6th to certify the election. I hope we don't have to wait till January 6th to officially accept the results of this election. But you do have a lot of people who follow QAnon. And apparently, QAnon is a lot of women. It's a majority women-led movement, or majority member woman movement. And so, and what you see here, and this is a Quinnipiac University poll that found that 77%, this is just how divided this country is right now. 77% of Republicans believe there was widespread voter fraud, and just 34% of registered voters do not think Biden's win was legitimate. And this is all without proof of either one of those. So, I mean, just think if we had, if we get down the road and there's another candidate like a Donald Trump who wants to just muddy the waters even worse than what he's doing currently, like we are, what we're witnessing right now is something we haven't seen before. And so this kind of thinking has led this ability, or the, people being willing to believe conspiracy theories, has led a lot more people into extremist groups like QAnon, which think they have to now go forth and fight Joe Biden in 2021. Like, what does that mean? Like, what are you arming up to fight Joe Biden and the Democrats? Like, the language has definitely changed, Adrian, where it's not just a civil disagreement, like, I don't agree with your policies and things like that. Now we're saying, you're not American. I need to go get my gun and come out to your home and stand in front of it and say, you're going to go to jail, or, threaten you. Or, I mean, it's insane, the stuff that they're believing. But I just, Adrian, again, at what point do we have to just move on? I mean, you can say what you want about 2016 and Democrats, but they did not do this.
It's almost one of those things, Devin, where it's a struggle. It's a struggle between deciding how to regulate free speech, because everybody has a right to say these things. I mean, you take, for instance, QAnon, who perpetuated this idea that Donald Trump is a savior to stop blood drinking, Satan worshiping pedophiles, and that the Democrats were helping them. That's probably why QAnon was able to really target women, because when you think about women versus men, they're definitely more motherly towards children than men are, and that's probably why you have seen their numbers growing. And unfortunately, our policymakers are really behind the curve and really addressing domestic terrorism, whether it's for men or women. Because I think that when people think about terrorists, they think about people overseas, or they think about Muslims or some. They think about so stereotypical when they
Mm-hmm.
think about terrorism. But domestic terrorism, that's what the FBI and the CIA, every intelligence agency has been talking about domestic terrorism and how white supremacy and nationalism is on the rise here in America. And we don't have a system in place to really handle it. And our policymakers aren't really paying attention to it when they really need to be. So yeah, Devin, I don't know where we are in this and how we move from this, but I'm hopeful that come 2021, we're going to be able to have a point to where we can kind of move a little forward and get this thing going. We didn't want to end viewers on conspiracy theories because we've actually yeah, I know we've actually had some really nice things going on for Black women, and we wanted to make sure to highlight that. I know we just talked about women conspiracy theories and stuff like that, so we don't want to end on you thinking that two men from the Black agenda don't like women or something like that. So we want to show some things that happen in Black women. So first off, we got Rashida Jones, who's named MSNBC's next president, going to be the first Black woman to run a major cable news network, which is really, really awesome. We don't really get that. Obviously, we never had that before. Jones is making history, obviously, because like I said, never had that. According to Essence, prior to the title of Madam President, Jones was a senior vice president of the special news across NBC and MSNBC, and is taking over the longtime President Phil Griffin starting in February. Jones, who joined MSNBC as an executive producer in 2013 after working for a local television station in South Carolina, she raised her profile this election season, which, I would imagine, this election season, it probably wasn't hard for anybody to raise their profile because there was so much going on. She actually helped to produce, two of the town hall events with Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and helped oversee the second presidential debate hosted by NBC. So, I guess they figured if she can handle Donald Trump's lies, she can probably handle being president of the network.
Definitely. Yes, if you could put on a debate, and that second debate was definitely way better than the first one. Shout out to to Rashida Jones and Kristen Welker, and whoever else was involved with that debate. That debate was spotless. I mean, that was way better than the first one. But yes, I mean that's huge. I mean, she's running a major cable news network, and it's not often you see Black people, African Americans in the position to be able to influence what we see on television. And that is a big thing if you understand that the people normally who decide what you see on television all look the same. So this is a big deal in that we'll have the first Black woman to run a major cable news network. And so there was some other news here, that Black women were, they had a good week this week, making some big moves. But there was one here. This was from the political world. But President-elect Joe Biden did on Friday formally introduced Representative Marcia Fudge, who is of Warrensville Heights, which is a suburb of Cleveland. He announced her to be his nominee to head the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, aka HUD. And so Biden said, Fudge has built her career, working or fighting for working people on issues including affordable housing and urban revitalization. And of course, she saw and observed the Cleveland area congressional district that she represented for a dozen years. And so it was, of course, hit hard by the housing crisis. And she's kind of, seen the challenges that come with that. So I guess he felt as though she would make a great, a great head of the U.S. Department of Housing. And so Marcia Fudge there, something, typically, I hate to say this, Adrian, but you will see if they're going to appoint someone who's Black, they're probably going to put them at HUD. I think there was, she had mentioned before that she didn't want to necessarily be the head of HUD because it is kind of the typical position that they will appoint a Black person to. But nonetheless, she does get an opportunity to influence, affordable housing on a local level, hopefully, and really get to put her fingerprints on some of the things that the Trump administration was trying to do. Maybe she can try to reverse a lot of that. And so she actually used to be, if you didn't know, Marcia Fudge, the representative, she used to be the mayor of Warrensville Heights before she became a representative. So she's, steadily moving up the ladder there. So great news coming out of Cleveland, and great to see Marsha Fudge will be the head of HUD.
Yeah, and on to some sports, Devin. Dallas Wings new head
Yeah.
coach, Vicky Johnson. Awesome because she's the only black woman in the WNBA to be a head coach, which is so surprising because you see a league that's predominantly African American, and she's the only one that that kind of does that. But hey, hats off to her for being able to kind of break that ceiling. Hats off to Dallas Wings for formally announcing that and having her on. She's a two-time All-Star during her playing days. She joined the coaching ranks in 2011 with the then San Antonio Silver Stars. So she's actually just been on her way rising up. She
Mm-hmm.
actually served as their assistant. So it's only quite naturally that she kind of just moves on up into the ranks here as a head coach. So yeah, women making moves. So it's kind of good to see that carries over from politics to sports and on.
Definitely, and here we're season ticket holders for the Wings, so we were excited, to see her be named head coach, and it is kind of surprising too in a league that is majority black for there to be for her to be the only current black woman to be a head coach in the league. So a lack of diversity is not just apparent in the WNBA and in the cable news networks. You'll also see it across all industries, and so our last you know uh, person we wanted to recognize here was Tiffany Cross. And so if you don't watch MSNBC, you may not have seen her, but she's normally on there all the time giving great political analysis. She's been on MSNBC, she's been on CNN and Sirius XM, and she's finally really getting her big break to be on national TV. And so she's a political analyst and former resident fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School's Institute of Politics, and she will now anchor MSNBC's Saturday show that's going to be between 10 a.m. and noon, and she's going to be sharing the weekend hosting duties that was formerly held by Joy Reid's AM Joy. And so Tiffany Cross, that's huge for her to finally get her own show. On MSNBC. And even last summer, for those who are reading books now, one book to maybe pick up is her book. Her book is called Say It Louder: Black Voters, White Narratives, and Saving Our Democracy. So you can help her out in two ways: watch her show on Saturday, but also pick up her book on Amazon or from a black bookstore if you can find one in your area. So that's some black women who are really making some huge moves this week. Just to cap it off, Rashida Jones named president of MSNBC. She's the first black woman to run a major cable news network. Marsha Fudge is going to be the nominee from Joe Biden to head up the Housing and Urban Development Agency. And then we have Vicky Johnson, who is going to be the new coach of the Dallas Wings. She's going to be the only black woman in the WNBA to be currently a head coach. And then on MSNBC again, Tiffany Cross just got her big break, and she's going to have her own show on Saturdays between 10 a.m. and noon. And so, yeah, I mean, Adrian, I love to see the diversity. Of course, we know it's funny. We're still getting still the first black woman to run a major cable news network. And so there's still a lot of work to do, but it's definitely good to see that finally, particularly with Rashida Jones, you're seeing someone who looks like one of us be able to influence what we see on our televisions, and hopefully this diversity will continue in the Biden administration, but also across the industries with naming black CEOs and head coaches and mayors, DAs, you name it. Go down the ballot and try to pick people not only who look like you but who you agree with.
No, you are absolutely right. So I'm intrigued to see what this leads, going into 2021. And before we take our first break here, viewers, one little nugget we wanted to give you. I saw this the other day, is that it's going to be a Sister Act 3, Devin. I liked the first two, so I was happy to see that. Disney announced, they're going to have a third installment, bringing, of course, Whoopi Goldberg back. And they're actually going to have Tyler Perry on as one of their producers. So that'll be interesting, great, for him. And they didn't put out a release date yet, but they said it's in development. So, I'm sure it'll come out on Disney Plus. and we'll be able everybody be able to pop popcorn and live stream it from their house. So, with that, viewers, we're going to leave you and give you your first break, and then when we come back, we're going to obviously talk about COVID because that's what's going on in everybody's day to day. So we'll give you a break, and we'll be right back.
Good.
All right, viewers, let's get on back into this. So, obviously we got to make sure that we talk about COVID. And, one of the things that I hope is very clear, everybody, by this point, but COVID is not a hoax. Mask wearing is not a political decision. It's not, partisan. Social distancing is not fun, but it is something that's necessary, Devin, to, curb the virus. Those are some of the warnings that are coming out of the household of former Alabama State Senator Larry Dixon, who actually passed away recently from coronavirus. He actually told his wife of 53 years from a hospital bed, he told her this, sweetheart, we messed up. We dropped our guard. And what he was referring to is the fact that Dixon was really good about quarantining, but he made one slip up, Devin, and met with friends at a local restaurant just to catch up. That one slip up, actually, I believe 3 people ended up getting infected. I don't know how the other survived or not, but he actually passed away from this one slip up. And, the last thing he actually told his wife was, Ganelle, I love you. We've got to tell people this is real. You know, I know viewers, you probably get tired of us talking about COVID, but it's stories like this that make it to where we got to talk about COVID. David,
Yes.
I know everybody keeps saying that, it's that it dominates our lives, or don't let it dominate your lives, but there are countless. I mean, there's millions of Americans who are sick by it, hundreds of thousands who have lost loved ones. So it's dominating our lives. I mean, this past week, Devin, the United States set the deadliest day of the pandemic. On Friday, December the 11th, the U.S. reported 232,000 cases. It's a lot, 232,000 cases, Devin. I mean, that's a lot of cases. And 2.1 million tests were conducted. Currently, there are 108,000 people in the hospital, which is another daily record. I mean, we just keep setting daily records, Devin. We reported a little over, I'll give you the exact number of views. We reported 2,749 deaths recently. I mean, that's a lot, Devin. I mean, when I think that they were putting up charts that were talking about, our deadliest days in America. And I mean, most of them have been coronavirus. I mean, Wednesday we had, 3,054 deaths. I mean, Thursday, 3,067 deaths. I mean, it's ridiculous, Devin. It's one of those things to where, like, I just don't know what we're gonna, what's the messaging have to be to people for us to stop, making this so political and just start saving lives.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know what else people need to see. And look, we're not advocating for new lockdowns. We're not advocating for you to go inside and lock yourself in your basement. There is a middle ground here between not wearing a mask and just, going out there, not social distancing, not taking proper precautions and thinking it's a hoax. And then there's the other side of you need to lock yourself in the basement. You can't, go outside the door. Like, there's a middle ground here of if you go out, just protect yourself. Like the story you told before, don't take your guard down because you don't know when it's going to be, your turn to get this thing. And it's not a guarantee that you're going to die. Most of the people who get it, they live. They do. It's a 98%, I think, rate of which, the 98% of the people who get it live through it. But in a country of 330 million people, 2 to 3% of them, die at the hands of this virus. I mean, that's millions of people. So we have to do our parts to protect not only ourselves, but other people. And the fact that we are now reporting over 3,000 deaths a day is unheard of. Like, the highest we hit in the spring was 2,000. We're well over that, and we're going even higher. Like you say, every day we're setting a new record for cases.
I mean, Devin, we're over Pearl Harbor. We're over 9/11. I mean, we're really approaching some major numbers. I think people were talking about the total death count when you compare it to some of the wars we've been in. I mean, this is a big deal.
Yeah, it is, and it's and I'll just say it too. As far as that deadliest day in America, I would be careful a little bit with referring to it because it is referencing, single events. I mean, if you counted up the number of people who died from, say, heart disease and other things, it's going to be a way bigger number. Sure. So just to put that out there for people, if we're just talking about COVID-19, we're comparing it to, say, things like 9/11 and the wars, but we do know that a lot of more people die from other causes every single day. But people keep comparing this thing to the flu. And I always think about, the Sean Hannitys of the world who go on Fox News in February and say, oh, we had 0 deaths today from coronavirus. You have nothing to worry about. If the message had been different back then, where would we be right now, trying to fight this thing off? And I think, we really did. We messed up. A lot of people messed up, and our deaths are going up, our hospitalizations are going up, ICU numbers are going up. So this thing is really taking off. But there is good news on the horizon because we do have a vaccine now. And so what happened on Friday night was that the FDA has officially approved Pfizer to start getting its vaccine out to states and hospitals so they can start vaccinating people. And they're going to start really with the frontline workers. So nurses, doctors, those who are most at risk of death from coronavirus. So senior citizens, anybody that's probably got a compromised immune system, those things, that's going to go out first. And so this happened, I think, last night. And then Pfizer is saying they're going to actually have the vaccine ready to go at hospitals on Monday. So this is moving very, very quickly. You're talking a couple of days here. They're going to be getting out, trying to get out about 3 million doses of this COVID vaccine. And they're going to start rolling out trucks on Sunday morning, using UPS and FedEx. They're going to start delivering this vaccine. So, Adrian, although the pandemic, it's really crazy how this is working because the pandemic is really at its height. It is the worst it has ever been. But now we have a vaccine that's coming out. So I feel like we're telling people you need to take this seriously, but they're looking on television. They're saying, oh, well, we have a vaccine coming. Why do I need to continue wearing a mask? Why do I need to continue social distancing when in a month or so, we're going to have a vaccine?
Yeah, I think that's the issue. It's like people hear that reinforcements are coming and they just drop their guard completely. But we got to buckle down because from what every expert is saying, the general population is not going to be getting vaccinated until maybe summer of next year. Yep. So we've got to really buckle down over the next few months to make sure we're very vigilant until we become all vaccinated. Which I hope we do. I'm going to take the vaccine. I'm going to encourage other people to do it because it's one of those things where we've got to trust the science behind it. Don't pay attention to the president, but trust the science behind it because the FDA, they found the vaccine is highly protective with no major safety issues. Dr. Fauci has been behind it. A lot of former CDC director was behind him. There's a lot of people behind it. But Devin, my thing is, I feel like there's going to be a distribution challenge. I think that that's really going to be the hard part. Because when you look at how they're distributing, it's going to be going out to mainly large facilities, larger hospitals,
Mm-hmm.
because the vaccine's got to be below 94 degrees. I mean, it's real cold. And I think about like my hometown back in Newport, Mississippi. I'm like, more people in those communities, they're going to have to drive somewhere, or you're going to have to bus it to them. Like, how are you going to really get it to a lot of these rural communities? Where the next little thing we're going to talk about, viewers, is hospital closures. I mean, they're having a lot of their facilities shut down. They already don't even have good health care. So it's so interesting, Devin, that we're at this point still. It's like we had so many months to prepare for this, and we knew we were going to get to a point to where we were going to have a vaccine. But the administration again didn't take this part seriously with actually how we're going to get this thing out to people. Because Devin, when you hear stories like out of Chicago where Mercy Hospital is closing
Mm-hmm.
in spring of 2021, I'm sure that was a pretty large hospital where they probably were going to distribute some vaccines there. I imagine if that was one of, I think, Southside Chicago's largest and few hospitals. And when you take away that, viewers, that's a snag in healthcare for a lot of people. I mean, that goes beyond the pandemic, because when you think about a lot of people who are being affected by this are people with pre-existing conditions. People with pre-existing conditions, they need to have access to a hospital. You read reports, Devin, where if you have some people in rural communities who have like heart attacks and strokes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if there's a hospital that's 2 hours away, that's valuable time they've lost that person could die from because they can't get to care. So, viewers, that's why we try to bring you these important stories here where we talk to you about what's going on around the country, but how it really impacts us holistically, because, a lot of these things we don't pay attention to, and we have a voice in our democracy where we can, make our leaders pay attention to these things.
Exactly. And it's really, when you talk about what it's doing to the hospital system, what you referencing Mercy Hospital in Chicago closing, it really takes me back to our episode that we did over the summer, talking about how coronavirus really exposed the healthcare system and exposed really a broken healthcare system, particularly when it comes to Black people, and how the health disparities exist because of so many other things like grocery stores in your neighborhood and access to healthcare and hospitals and mental health access, and all those things. Coronavirus has just made so much worse, or uncovered it, so that we do see that, health disparities. I mean, look, this is in Chicago. The south side of Chicago and the north side of Chicago have a 30-year gap when it comes to life expectancy. That is what coronavirus is uncovering and is worsening in cities like Chicago and other Black cities and rural areas around the country. Is these things, it's uncovering a system that doesn't work. I mean, it just doesn't. Hospitals are losing money, particularly in rural communities. They have a lot of Medicaid and Medicare patients, which means lower profits to keep this hospital up and running. And then you add in there maybe people who don't have healthcare insurance, which is, if you're in a minority community, you're going to get a lot of people who don't have health insurance, and they're going to come in and get services and not probably pay for them on the back end, which leads the hospital to have to cover their losses somehow, some way. And so, yeah, Adrian, I mean, this is the vaccine distribution, the coronavirus pandemic itself. All of this is testing the healthcare system in a way that we haven't really seen before. And so it really puts the pressure on Congress to do something regarding the Affordable Care Act and improving that, but also improving the healthcare system as a whole, to figure out a better way of going forward. Because I don't know how you recover if you're a hospital from this pandemic, if you're amassing humongous losses because there are so many people in the hospital, many of which may not have health insurance, who are probably not going to pay those bills on the back end. And so it is a real mess here. And so we just wanted to bring you those stories to show you just the impact of COVID outside of just you catching it personally. It is affecting every single aspect of life here in this country, whether that's economic, health, as you see, mental health. It is really, dug into and uncovered some ugly problems that we do need to fix going into 2021. And so one thing we did want to, point out here is that if you're wondering about stimulus, we always talk about, the COVID vaccine and the COVID numbers and everything, but we are all wondering if and when we're going to get another coronavirus relief bill. And unfortunately, we're sorry to report there is no coronavirus stimulus on the way just yet. We heard a bunch of reporting last week that they might come to a deal, but as of right now, Republicans and Democrats cannot agree. They just can't, Adrian. And I just don't understand this. 2 weeks from Christmas, we still don't have a bill. We still don't have a deal. We don't have any help for people who are just recently laid off, including myself. Like, this is what I don't understand about Congress. We should be docking their pay every single day that they go on without a bill. Like, they should not get paid unless we get some kind of help. And so, and if you're wondering what's taking so long, there's a few things that the Republicans and Democrats can't really agree on. One is whether or not to include additional unemployment insurance money. And so the original bill said they were going to put enough money in there for $300 a week as a top up. Remember, over the summer, it was $600. They're going to cut that to $300. They are also arguing over whether or not to give a second round of stimulus checks to people. And that could be $600 or it could be $1,200. They seem to not even agree on if they want to do it and then how much, or if they want to do both unemployment insurance and a stimulus check, or one or the other. And then the other thing that's really, hanging this up is money for state and local governments, and then also liability protection for businesses and corporations and all that. So I don't know, Adrian, if a deal is going to come. It looks like the longer this drags on, we very well may go into Christmas without any kind of help. And it's just, I don't know what that's going to do for 2021. You see the jobless numbers are getting worse. Unemployment claims are going up. That's not what you want to see with the new administration getting ready to come in and Christmas is coming. It's just a real mess, and they seem to not be able to get it together.
Yeah, it's almost like typical Congress,
Yeah.
always complaining, fighting, getting paid, taking vacations, but never really working for the American people. Government by and for and of the people, but that's only a mantra. It's not anything that they live by, it seems, because people like Grim Reaper Mitch and a lot of his, Republican colleagues just don't. I don't understand how they don't see the struggle and the hurt of a lot of their own constituents. It's not like people in Kentucky and South Carolina aren't struggling or aren't dying, just like people here in California and your state, Texas. It's the same way. So I don't understand the divide there. But before we let you go, viewers, one little nugget to kind of maybe help out in all of this economic calamity. There was a vow from a lot of America's top CEOs to hire at least 1 million African Americans going into next year. Apparently, there's a coalition called the 110 Coalition, which is made up of about 37 members and corporate giants from AT&T to Bank of America to Comcast, General Motors, IBM, Nike, Verizon, Walmart. So, a lot of big giants in there. But they're saying that they are really interested in Black workers who don't have a college degree, Devin. So that will definitely be something that will help out going into 2021 if these CEOs actually get into business with doing this. I hope that 1 million number kind of goes up, because that's only a tadpole in the pond with as much unemployment as we have right now. So I hope that we can get a little bit more than that. So with that, viewers, we're going to take you, or rather, we're going to give you another break. And then when we come back, we're going to go into our third segment, which remembers our more open-ended segment. We got some good topics for you. So we're going to give you a break, and we'll be right back.
All right, welcome back, everybody. So we want to get into some more news from around, the states, but we'll start with, of course, the Biden transition. We'll give you a little bit of news about that. President-elect Biden has been busy this week announcing more members of his cabinet, some more picks, that he's announced. And so one thing has definitely become clear as he's been announcing all of these picks in his cabinet is that he definitely, over those 8 years of being President Obama's vice president, he did make apparently some really good relationships to where he is pulling a lot of people, from the Obama administration into the Biden administration. And just to give you an idea, out of the 16 top cabinet picks that President-elect Biden has announced, 12 of them were Obama appointees. So that gives you an idea of the reach back that Joe Biden is doing right now, from the Obama years. And so he's really put an emphasis on personal relationships that he's made with a lot of these advisors. And he highlights that on day one, he wants people who are ready to help him and lead the country's recovery from the pandemic. And so the question that we really wanted to discuss is, is Biden bringing in too much from the Obama years? Is this really going to be Obama 2.0? A lot of people said, if Hillary Clinton got elected, it was really going to be a continuation of the Obama years. And that's kind of how she ran. Joe Biden, not so much, running, trying to be a continuation of the Obama administration. But Adrian, with 12 out of the 16 top cabinet picks being, former Obama appointees, it kind of seems like, an Obama 3.0 administration.
Devin, I would say that I would definitely be more on the side that it's a little too much Obama. Like, I get the whole thing that you want to bring on people who you trust, who you've worked with, you've got a relationship, who need to be ready day one for the pandemic. But I think another thing that presidents have kind of tried to do is also springboard, other front runners in the party by giving them those positions to showcase their talents and their skills and show that they're trying to diversify their cabinet. I think that's kind of what a lot of presidents have tried to do. But Joe Biden, he ran, I'm running to save the soul of America. So he did run saying that he wants to have experienced people. Yeah. So, in that regard, I don't see a slight to it. All the people that he's bringing on, in some cases, like I think one person he's bringing on from Virginia actually served in the post that Obama had him in both terms. I think the Secretary of Agriculture.
Tom Vilsack.
Tom Vilsack. He's bringing him in, he's been there for 8 years. So I get it that you're bringing in people who know what to do, but in a climate that we're in where we're so partisan, I wouldn't want to look so much like Obama, because I know a lot of the Republican Party does not like Obama, Devin. So that's one thing I would say.
Yeah, it could. I look at it, in this way. It could work in that there is familiarity. Oh, I butchered that. But familiarity with, with his team, but also with these folks do have some experience in working in government. And I guess, with the transition that got started late, a pandemic that's going on, an economic crisis that's currently going on, you do need people in there who have had experience working in government and know the, kind of the ins and out and how to get things going and don't have to have so much, on the job training, I guess, to get up to speed with certain things. And so in that way, it may work for him because he has so many people he's worked with before, and they can really come in and kind of, hey, you did this during those years, we need you to do this right now type of deal. So, it could work. It's not, encouraging. I don't think anybody expected Joe Biden's administration to be transformative, and he have, lots of people in positions that we didn't expect, a lot of young people, but I think it's just the time. I think if the pandemic wasn't happening, it might be different. But I think in this crisis, it does call for a little bit more maybe experienced appointees. And so it's interesting. It's interesting to see, some of the other things that he, appoints, whether it's judges or anything like that. Maybe he'll be more free to pick people who are not necessarily cut from the same cloth. But that's a little bit on the Biden transition. And it did have, there was some pressure for folks, we talked about it last week with Jim Clyburn, saying that the Biden administration needs to, diversify its cabinet more. So we did already talk about Marcia Fudge is going to be the head of HUD, but actually Biden and Harris, and so Joe Biden and Kamala Harris both met virtually, of course, with the heads of 7 of the nation's most prominent civil rights organizations, including the NAACP, the National Urban League, the National and the National Action Network. And this was a nearly 2-hour call that they had with them, and it really was talking about a more diverse cabinet. And so, Adrian, this really speaks to the attitude now. I think you're seeing this go around when it comes to black people in particular. I don't think they're going to be so keen on the whole, we voted for you and we're just going to let you do what you do. We're going to hold your feet to the fire to some of those things you said in the debates, and what you said after during your acceptance speech, that you said black people had your back, and you're going to have theirs too. We want to see that echoed in your cabinet picks. We want to see that diversity. And so some people weren't quite seeing that, and they spoke out. And I think this is going to continue throughout the Biden administration when it comes to getting some of the things that we want done, and holding them accountable, him and Kamala Harris, for a lot of the things that they said, because black people were his backbone during the primary and during the general. You don't win Georgia without the support of African Americans. And so they want to see some return in their investment this time.
No, I agree. I think not only are African Americans wanting to see some returns on their investments, but progressives are also wanting to see the same thing, because he's been taking some heat from them too.
Yeah.
But he kind of came out clearly during that same meeting with the civil rights leaders, and I mean, he said that he's going to undo every damn thing that Trump has done. But he did make sure to say that he's going to abide by the Constitution, because there are certain things that Congress are supposed to mandate, like gun control. So it is good to see that he's going to try to restore the soul of America, because I would agree that there are a number of things, from putting kids in cages that the Trump administration has endorsed, that we need to undo. So that's great to see. Another story here, viewers. We wanted to bring this to you just because Devin and I, KK Psi, so we're both, fraternity brothers, frat, people. And we saw this story come out of LSU, where apparently this case was actually back in 2017. It actually had gotten thrown out, but the Supreme Court kind of worked its way back up and, said that they're not going to deny the appeal, because LSU has been trying to say for years they should be immune from a lawsuit filed by parents of a fraternity pledge out of Georgia. Rather, the fraternity pledge was from Georgia, who had died of acute alcohol poisoning. This was from, like I said, 2017. The fraternity pledge was Maxwell Groover, and the fraternity Phi Delta Theta, they were actually having a fraternity party, and he drank too much. So, this is probably a story where I'm sure a lot of universities, Devin, would like to advocate and say they're immune from, from the things that, you and I did at our parties. Because, yeah, I will admit, viewers, some of our fraternity events, I mean, they did get wild, and there probably was too much drinking from people. But if you're going to be a university, that these things are happening. I mean, I don't think you're a university in America, particularly in the SEC, at a school like LSU, Mississippi State, yes, Ole Miss. That fraternities are doing these things. And it's good to see the Supreme Court is trying to hold LSU accountable. The attorney for the family is just, saying that the discovery phase is going to show more reason to why LSU fought so hard to try to avoid all of this. And yeah, Devin, I'm like I said, I'm not one of those ones who's trying to say stick it to them, but I think, from my experience of what I saw with fraternities and what we see, from a lot of different fraternity news, this is a good precedent that the Supreme Court is setting, that universities gotta they're responsible.
Yeah, and then that's the unfortunate part of college and universities, and like you say, being in the SEC and at big schools. There is a culture there of this, hazing and parties that we all know how it happens. There's tons of alcohol everywhere for people who probably aren't of age. If they are of age, they're drinking far more than they should. And so you see things like this. And these schools do know what's going on. They, how do they not know what's going on their own campus? They know exactly what's happening, but some of these schools get famous off having a party culture, and so that has helped them, be able to recruit students. But this is the other side to it, which is that it does go a step too far. I think there was even a case at Penn State maybe where a kid had died at a frat party where he drank too much and may have, I think he may have fallen down the stairs and actually passed away. And so these things are happening. Yes, it's good that universities will now have to be held accountable, so maybe they'll actually do something. We're not saying to go be, party crashers, but at least have some kind of oversight to what's happening on your campus and make sure that your students are safe and aren't being forced to drink, massive amounts of alcohol to join a frat. It shouldn't be that way. And so the other story, and this is switching gears a little bit here, going still in education, but going up to Connecticut this time, particularly to high schools. And so we got some word here that Connecticut will actually be the first state that's going to require their high schools to offer Black and Latino studies. And this is going to start in the fall of 2022. And so beginning in 2022, all high schools in Connecticut will have to offer courses on African American, Black, Puerto Rican, and Latino studies in the state of Connecticut. And so, like I said, it's the first in the nation to offer, with a more diverse curriculum. And so the governor there made the announcement on Wednesday, and he signed the bill, and they'll have to be required to include an elective course that provides a better understanding of African American, Black, Puerto Rican, and Latino contributions to U.S. history, society, the economy, and culture. And so the downside of the law is that it requires the high schools to offer the course, but it does not require students to take it. And so that's where my mind went first when I saw elective. This needs to be required. The first step really is to go in and take all the textbooks they have right now and throw them out and rewrite them and put African American and Puerto Rican and Latino history into the textbooks that we read all the time that are required for these classes. Rather, I get it. They want to look progressive, but just make it a required course. We don't need the electives.
Yeah, Devin, whenever I saw this story, it got me excited from the headline, because you see the headline and you think, okay, we're getting somewhere, but you read into it and you see that they're making an elective. It's not even required. And when you think about this, and viewers, I don't want you to, view this statement incorrectly, but when you think about the fact that, a lot of the people who need this sorts of education, they're probably not incentivized or encouraged to take this class. I mean, if you're someone who you don't already really believe in this sort of kind of stuff, or you don't really make this a part of who you are, you're probably not going to be inclined to go take a class on how Puerto Ricans help the American economy. I just don't think that the average high schooler is going to be. I mean, I'm just thinking back to my days of being in high school. I stuck to what was in the curriculum as far as what I needed to graduate with. I didn't really deviate too much. I mean, I did band and football and stuff like that. You only get so many. The other thing, Devin, you only get so many electives per grade. I mean, in most grades, you only get one elective. So if you're one elective, if you need an extra science to graduate, are you going to choose science, or are you going to choose to do this class that teaches you about African American history? You're probably not going to do it. So I don't mean to get heated, viewers, but this is something that Devin and I are passionate about. We would love to, we're going to lobby, more states to begin to do. But yeah, it's good. I don't want you to think that we're not saying this isn't good. It is great to see that a state is doing this. But what we're saying is that they should have just made it part of the curriculum and not made it elective. I get that that's maybe a harder obstacle, but hey, you got till 2022. I mean, you got a year and a half to put it into. Yeah, it's doable.
It's doable. So, our last story here. This is our last education story, and could be a potential big one in the state of Mississippi when it comes to school funding. And so, we got word here that this week a federal appeals court has allowed a group of Mississippi parents to pursue a lawsuit that says the state allows huge disparities in funding between predominantly Black in predominantly white schools. And so this lawsuit was actually originally dismissed in 2019, but was revived by a 9-8 ruling on Monday in the appeals court. And so, like I say, the suit started in 2017, was filed by the Southern Poverty Law Center on behalf of low-income black women who said their children and others were in some of the worst conditions and had lower academic performance than well-off, predominantly white students. And so the plaintiff's children, the black women who filed this lawsuit, their children were in school districts where only 11% of the students were proficient in reading and math, and not to mention that they got a D rating from the state. And so the lawsuit also claimed that the schools had wet ceilings, chipping paint, and inexperienced teachers compared to places like Madison, DeSoto, and Gulfport. That's where I went to. And those places where the proficiency rate of reading and writing amongst the students was 65% compared to 11% where these kids were going to school. And so their attorney, Mr. Will Bardwell, made a statement on Tuesday where he laid out why this case is important. He mentioned that more than 80% of Mississippi's highest performing school districts are majority white, and all of the failing school districts are majority black. And so, Adrian, we talked about, this is one of our almost our very first episode. I think it was the second one or third one. We talked with Chris Rakel, who was the Washington State superintendent, I believe, state superintendent. And we talked to him about how they changed their funding model. But this is not a surprise to us. You know, we lived in Mississippi. I did go to Gulfport. But even then, there were some disparities there. I mean, even within a school district that you would assume is good, if there was a school that was majority black, it probably wasn't that good. It wasn't funded like it should have been. And so I can only imagine, you know, in a district where 11% of the students are proficient in reading and math, you know, what they're having to deal with on top of the conditions that they're having to go to school in.
I mean, it's sad, Devin, and I can attest to this. I mean, I can remember I was in a school in Tupelo, and Tupelo is a really good district. I mean, you go to the predominantly white school, and it looks like you're on a freaking community college campus. But you go to, I'm not going to name the name, I mean, I should, but I'm not. You go to this predominantly black school, and I overheard them having a meeting, Devin, where they didn't even have enough paper to print assignments. They had to almost ration paper and figure out which assignments they were going to be doing for the students. And this was an elementary school where in that age range, you're visual. I mean, you need things to put your hands on so you can learn. These disparities, viewers, they're real. This is why we were bringing these sorts of things up, because I mean, you probably have some schools, viewers in your communities who have wet ceilings, chip paint, who don't have paper to print assignments. You probably go to some schools where the reading and writing proficiency rates are really low, and if you look at the people around you, if they all look the same color, that may be an indication that something's off there. That may be an indication that the funding is not adequately dispersed amongst race and your state. You think about it, Devin, Mississippi, Jim Crow, slavery, separate income. I mean, that was really, really rich history, really, really rich part of our history, rather. So it's not, and even if you go further, Devin, I think there's actually a law that's in our old civil rights history that kind of allows our legislature to try to do these things with funding. I was kind of looking into this a little bit more. It's just appalling that we're at this point, Devin, where you're still in 2020 going into 2021, where we've already lost or some students have lost a year or two of learning due to the pandemic, and we've got cases like this to where the disparities are so real that those communities, they've been hit even harder because they didn't have cable, or rather they didn't have internet and iPads and stuff like that to just do distance learning. So yeah, viewers, it's a real issue that we wanted to make sure that we can address, not only because it's from Mississippi, but like I said, this is going on probably in your state. You just got to do your research.
Yeah, I mean, that's and the problem is with the funding model. So in most school districts in Mississippi, and I think even here in Texas, the funding model, the most of the funding for schools comes from property taxes in the local area. So you got to imagine, if you're in a city that is, say, you're in Jackson, Mississippi, where it's, majority black, and then You factor in the fact that most black people in those areas have lower paying jobs, so they're less likely to be homeowners. If they are homeowners, they're probably in an area that doesn't have high property values, which means you're not going to be paying that much in property taxes, which is less money going into the schools that are in that area. And so this funding model creates the disparity. The funding model itself is unfair because, yes, you can have, like you were saying, kids in areas like DeSoto and the suburbs of Jackson and Madison, where these kids are, going to brand spanking new schools. They look incredible. They look like colleges. And then you can go, 10 miles down the road into Jackson, and it's chipping paint, it's wet ceilings, it's not working AC.
They don't even have doors on the bathroom stalls in some of the schools.
No doors on the bathroom stalls. Like, what new teacher coming out of college is going to want to work there? They can't attract the best of new talent. One, because they don't have the money to pay them, and then two, they're walking into these types of conditions, and so that is a problem that is playing out across the country because of the way that we fund our schools. Is just not fair. It doesn't make
when you throw on the pandemic, Devin, where you're about to have a federal government that's not giving state and local funding, which plays a lot into the funding of our schools. Devin, every governor always says it whenever their budgets are low. Education is the first thing that gets cut. That's what, I like Andrew Cuomo of New York, but that's the first thing he said during, this pandemic is that he's cutting education. I'm sure my governor Newsom, he's probably talking about cutting education because I've seen ads talking about it. So, yeah, this is a big deal. You already got such great disparities in funding, and you've got this pandemic that's made some students lose a lot of time in education, and you got this funding imbalance here. So it's a lot, Devin, to say the least.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I've been introducing these nuggets before the break, so I think you'd like this nugget here.
No, yeah. So this is our nugget here. So Time Magazine released their Person of the Year, Guardian of the Year, and Athlete of the Year. And so their Person of the Year is actually two people. It's Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
I wish they would have changed that to say People of the Year.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I got confused because it said person, but it was two names. But yeah, so Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are your 2020 Time Magazine's People, aka Person of the Year. And then they named Dr. Fauci and frontline healthcare workers as Guardians of the Year, along with other racial justice organizers. And then LeBron James is your Athlete of the Year for Time Magazine. So if you read Time Magazine, those are your People, Guardian, and Athlete of the Year. And so with that, we're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, we're going to get into our quick hits, which is actually some pretty good stuff. So it's always good. But this one is really good. Stay around. We got some stories about Black Santa's popping up. Ben & Jerry's has a new ice cream flavor. And we even give you some environmental news. And a certain rapper also got arrested and pled guilty. So we'll give you all that after the break. Stick with us. Welcome back, everybody. And so we're going to get into our quick hits here. And like I said before the break, we had some really good stories here. So our first one is going to come out of Little Rock, Arkansas. And so apparently there were some neighbors who put up a black Santas after they received a hateful letter from one of their neighbors. And so the name of the resident is Chris Kennedy. He's a resident of North Little Rock, Arkansas, and he received a letter stating that he needed to remove his quote now, his Negro Santa Claus yard decoration, end quote. The letter went on to say that Chris was trying to deceive children into thinking Santa is black. The letter went on to say that Chris's viewpoint and values are not that of Lakewood area, and maybe his family should move to another neighborhood with the rest of his racist kind. But then his neighbors got involved and active all over the Lakewood area, and Black Santa started to appear on lawn after lawn, and neighbors stood up to support Chris and his family. Even retailers in the area are reporting low stock on inflatable Black Santas. So, Adrian, that's a good story out of 2020. You know, to see the neighborhood come together to unite behind Black Santas. Hopefully, they're not out there deceiving children who might believe Santa's white and they walk around and see a Black Santa.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, that's the letter was very hateful. I was like, whoever put this letter up was just wrong. I mean, it was talking about how he was jealous of the white race or whatever, and that he shouldn't take that out by trying to deceive children.
I like the deceive part. Like Santa's imaginary, so how are you?
Yeah, he's
who's really doing the deceiving here?
Exactly. And hey, viewers, to give you that climate news that Devin was talking about, we actually got a report out of this year where carbon dioxide emissions have actually dropped globally by about 7%. This was out of a recent study. I know 2020 has been a tough year for the human life on Earth, but 2020 has definitely given our planet a little breathing room when it comes to our carbon footprint. Again, carbon emissions worldwide actually reduced by 7%. Interestingly, the United States, we saw a decline of about 12%. Wow. It's actually, this report is coming out of the Global Carbon Project, where they say the world this year is going to put out about 37 billion tons of carbon dioxide, which I know that's a large number, but that's about 40 billion tons less than 2019. So 2019, we had about 77 billion. 2020, we got about 37 billion. So, like I said, the world is getting a chance to breathe. Obviously, scientists are saying this is credited to the stay-at-home orders, less travel. When you look at it, Devin, ground travel actually makes up about 1/5 of the emissions of carbon dioxide. So we're not, traveling as much. So, like I said, I know it's hard, but hey, maybe we need to kind of keep up a little bit less travel to kind of give our planet a little bit more breathing room.
Yeah, I'm all for that. One story here that you might like this if you like ice cream and you like Ben and Jerry's. But Ben and Jerry's has come out with a new ice cream flavor, and they are teaming up with former NFL player Colin Kaepernick, and they're introducing a new flavor in his honor. And so a portion of the proceeds for this new flavor will go to his Know Your Rights campaign, and the flavor will be non-dairy, and it's going to be called Changed the World. So, and that's world as in the world of the ice cream. And so it would be sold nationwide at the beginning of next year, and it will feature a caramel sunflower butter base with fudge chips, graham cracker, and chocolate cookie swirls. Kaepernick is a vegan, just in case you were wondering, and wanted the ice cream to kind of be in that same stream there of the same because he is a vegan. And so Ben & Jerry calls itself an aspiring social justice company, and if you have ever bought Ben & Jerry's and looked on their wrappers and anything, if you follow them on social media, really, they are not quiet about their, voicing their concerns about racial justice issues and social justice issues. So not surprising that they've, partnered with Colin Kaepernick to come up with a flavor. And you may have to try it out, see if it's any good, even though it's non-dairy. So there you go.
I know I'm not. I was definitely saying I'm not vegan like Colin, but maybe I'll buy it with the intent that those proceeds are going to to a charity or something. So Devin, another story. This is out of Florida. This is really interesting here. Officers stormed a men's clothing store Tuesday morning in Pembroke Pines. I think hopefully that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
but there were concerns of some people storming into the store armed with rifles. So obviously, with cops here, some people with rifles going into a store, I would probably call it. If I saw that, I'd call the cops too. That's what the people did. So when the cops raided the store, they actually raided a music video viewers. Everybody that was raiding in there, that was a part of the film or whatever that they were raiding in there just to kind of make a scene. And the guns that they were using were actually fake guns, so there weren't real guns. And the people that were running into the store, they were actually actors, so they weren't bandits or anything like that. The shopping center that the clothing store was in was actually closed, so the store was the only thing that was in use. Police, however, did note that the city did not issue a permit for the filming, and the shopping center management team had not been told of the viewing, or rather the filming. So, they didn't cross all of their bases. They asked the store owner, but they didn't ask everybody else, Devin. Fortunately, because they used fake guns, they didn't use them in a threatening manner, nobody's going to be getting charged.
Yeah, when I heard it, I was like, that could have gone way to the left and ended up way worse than what it was. But staying in that same stream, talking about a music video, some and news
guns,
here and guns. This is some news coming out of the rap world. But rapper Lil Wayne pled guilty to a federal gun charge. He actually could face prison time. And so it's 38-year-old rapper. If you don't know, his name is Dwayne Michael Carter. And on Friday, he actually pled guilty in Miami court to charges related to an incident that happened last year when federal agents searched his private plane and they found a gold-plated weapon and a whole bunch of drugs. And so this is actually coming from the South Florida U.S. Attorney's Office. They said an anonymous tip led agents to search Lil Wayne's plane at the Opelika Airport in December of 2019, where they found a gold-plated Remington 1911 and a .45 caliber handgun loaded with 6 rounds of ammunition in its bag. They also found what they say was personal use amounts of cocaine, ecstasy, and oxycodone. And so the results of that search put Lil Wayne in hot water because he's already been convicted and sentenced to 8 years in prison on weapons charges and has already been barred from possessing firearms since that arrest and conviction. And so now with this, he took responsibility for having the weapon in a remote hearing that he just recently had, and now he's going to await sentencing. And so that sentencing hearing is scheduled for January 28th. And so, Adrian, we know Lil Wayne has made headlines in the political world because he supports Donald Trump. So I think this is a federal case. So maybe his buddy Donald might look out for him and pardon him should he be actually sentenced to prison for this search.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one to have to go through, Devin. It's not a laughing matter, I guess, because obviously no one wants anybody to go to prison. But I guess if you know that you're not supposed to be possessing firearms, you probably shouldn't have any firearms, or get your affinity with firearms. Go to a fire range and just shoot there, and then just leave the guns there, I guess. That would definitely make more sense. The other one here looks like mispronounced words. We got that up here. And Devin, since you've got the graphic, I can let you guys makes more sense for you to go over this one too.
Okay. So this came from the U.S. Captioning Company. I've never heard of it, but they released a list of the most mispronounced words of 2020. And so of course I saw it. I was like, oh, we got to put that up to let you go, sit at home and butcher these names. And so they actually, the U.S. Captioning Company, of course, they use captions and subtitles for real-time events on TV and in courtrooms. And so they released this list on Wednesday, and it provides the most challenging words for news readers and people on television to announce. And so you will recognize at least one or two of these names on this list. And so let's put it up so you can take a look here. And so starting from the top, we all know Anthony Fauci. If you don't know him, you should know him. We all met him during the pandemic in March. And so Anthony Fauci, if you don't know, it's right there. You can see the phonetic spelling. It's Anthony and then Fauci. It's not Fauci or some other weird saying. He is the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. And the second one, I tried to pronounce this, Adrian. I could not.
I can't either. It looks like it's Pongta Sananda.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, maybe.
I
I don't know.
Pangtan so Nyanda
See,
Nyandan.
I don't listen to South Korean pop music, so
Me neither.
I mean, I like Drake and I listen to Hamilton and some other stuff like that, but I haven't dipped into this. I do, of course, Kamala. I do know
Yeah.
how to say
Yes.
that one. Viewers that made the list, but I do know how to say that one. We were talking off the show about how some people just don't want to get that right, and I think that they don't want to get that right just because they
That's on
don't like
purpose.
her.
Yeah, that's absolutely on purpose. Nobody needs to say Kamala or Kamalala or anything like that. It's
Right.
Kamala, and it's
I
right
don't know
there.
how Nevada got on the list. I
Because
didn't think that would.
a lot of people say it like you just said. It's Nevada.
Nevada. Okay.
Yeah.
I say Nevada. Okay, there we
So
go.
for those people at home who say Nevada, if you see it there, it
Hey, it's
has
Nevada.
ad in it. Nevada.
There you
So
go.
those people in Nevada probably, scream every time they hear somebody say the state's name wrong.
That's probably so.
Exactly. And then I know this one, Giannis. It's okay. So the third one here is a Greek basketball player who plays for the Bucks. He's a huge star, previous MVP, and so his name is Giannis Antetokounmpo. Is what I got. It's close, but good luck trying to say that 3 times really fast. The other one here, Leonardo da Vinci. I didn't think this was a hard one to say, but it's right there, Leonardo da Vinci. He's an Italian painter, architect, and engineer who created the Mona Lisa. And then the last one there is Yosemite, not Yosemite, like the president said.
Yes, Mike.
Yeah, he said that earlier this year. It's Yosemite, and that's the national park in California, Sierra Nevada mountains. So yes, for those folks who always struggle with saying people's names, these are the most mispronounced words of 2020.
Yeah, the easiest thing, viewers, if you don't know how to say something, just type it in the YouTube or Google, and then just put pronunciation after it, and it's going to tell you exactly how to pronounce stuff. Because I've had to do that myself when we put these scripts together. So, hey, Devin, we're at the end of another weekly roundup. Viewers, we know that it's a little longer, but we thank y'all for hanging in. We always try to give you some real good tidbits and some good news. We know that election and COVID is definitely dominating a lot that's going on, but we always try to reflect and show how it's affecting us on a larger scale. Don't forget, now, just like the live stream, we also have a podcast next week. Well, actually, I guess this Tuesday, it'll be December the 15th. It's going to be our last podcast episode of season 1, Devin.
Man,
I don't even know how many episodes we've got out. Probably like 40 or more, but we've been hard at it, viewers. So go back and listen to some of this episodes from season 1. We're very grateful for all of our fans who've been with us throughout this year. We reached over 2,100 downloads in over a little over 6 months, or about 6 months. So yeah, our last episode of the year is going to be with our motivational speaker, marketing guru, Maurice W. Evans, where he's going to deliver a good inspirational message to get us into 2021. So yeah, Devin, wanted to make sure to highlight that.
Yeah, I mean that's huge for us. 2,100 downloads in 6 months. To us, that's magnificent, for having no experience in podcasting whatsoever. To be able to put that together just shows, the support we have and lets us know we're moving in the right direction. And so, yeah, we're going to go on a break. It's Christmas holidays. We figure we give y'all a break. We give ourselves a break. And we're doing an autopsy of the show, and then we'll come back to you on Inauguration Day. Or actually, no, it's MLK Day. MLK Day 2021. We'll come back.
Yeah, we figured if we started on a Black holiday, Juneteenth, we need to come back on a Black holiday.
Exactly. So we keep that tradition going there. So we'll be back next year. MLK Day 2021, Black Agenda Podcast, Season 2. We'll be right back, with more interviews, better interviews. We'll be back doing our weekly roundups, bringing you the latest news, the start of the Joe Biden administration. We're going to talk about all that. So join us next week. It's our last weekly roundup of the year. Weekly roundup number 19 will be coming back to you December 19th at 7:30. Join us for our last show. We may have some special guests. You never know. So you maybe should watch it, check it out. And as always, donate to us. The link is up. So if you see it right there, you can look at it, type it in your web browser, go to give us a few dollars for Christmas maybe, to help us get 2021 off to a good start. And of course, as always, follow us on social media, which is Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Black Agenda Pod. And that's at Black Agenda Pod. You can follow us, share whatever you see, share today's episode if you like it that much. And yeah, and so any last thoughts, Adrian, before we get out of here, our second to last show?
Yeah, I could say a lot, because I always am good at statements, but I think we've laid it out and we've been real thorough with this episode, and I'm just excited to come back next week with the last one.
Yeah. All right. So with that, we'll catch you guys next week, December 19th at 7:30 p.m. For weekly roundup number 19. Until then, we'll catch you next time.